Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Pitchforce. Thank you for joining us. We've got companies from all over the country. We've got 60 people from all over the country and some outside of the U.S. here for our Pitchforce event today. Before we get started, it's my pleasure to introduce Rob Gerardo with Insperity. They do a great job in the HR area, and we're proud to have them as sponsor. Rob, tell us a little bit about Insperity, please.
Yeah, absolutely, Max. Thanks for the introduction. Yeah, so Insperity is an HR outsourcing company that helps the best small to medium-sized businesses manage their most important asset, which is their people. And we allow companies as small as 3 to 5 to participate in economies of scale that result in an HR benefit solution that would be impossible to achieve on their own. Our Fortune 500 benefit program allows our clients to compete on a level playing field for attracting and retaining new talent. And when it comes to people, there's an entire ecosystem that comes into play. There's the 401k, benefits, payroll, workers' comp, leadership development, training, onboarding, offboarding, etc. I mean, I could go on and on, but basically Insperity helps build, implement, and execute an effective HR strategy so our clients can focus on running and growing their business. It's great to see you participating in Pitchforce.
Great. Well, thank you for being here. And I know we've got several of our clients that are very using Insperity and very happy with the service. So let me tell you a little bit about what's going to happen here this afternoon, and then talk a little bit about what we do at People Connecting with Pitchforce. So we've got 5 companies. All of the panelists have received their executive summaries, and those companies will do a 1-minute elevator pitch. And the panelists will immediately vote on a scale of 1 to 5 how much they like them. At the end of that time, we'll have a winner. The company that got the highest score will be declared the winner of the 1-minute elevator pitch today. The 5 companies that will then move on to the second round, where they will do a 4-minute PowerPoint, 4 minutes of Q&A, and about 8 to 10 minutes of non-rebuttal feedback. So those of us who are on this call, and I know this includes everybody, even though I don't know most of you, have issues with thinking that your mute button is not on and you're talking and the mute button is on, and it's real frustrating. And you sit there and think, God, how could that guy or gal be so stupid as to not realize that they're muted? But so the reason I'm telling you all this is to the 5 presenters, when the feedback starts, we're going to ask you to mute yourself because it's non-rebuttal feedback. So you're going to listen to what the panelists say. Feel free to take notes, although that's not necessary because you'll get a recording, as will everybody. Tomorrow, you'll get a link to a recording of today's event. So that's what's going to be happening. Let me talk a little bit about our 2 companies, People Connect and Pitchforce. People Connect is a 21-year-old contingency recruiting firm that helps early stage tech startups fill all different types of positions anywhere in the United States, any level, you name it. It could be a VP of engineering, it could be a software engineer, it could be a chief revenue officer or an SDR dialing for dollars. As I said, we are focused on early stage startups, all different kinds of startups. Doesn't matter whether it's a SaaS company, medical device, real tech, ag tech, you name it, we fill it. And as I said, we love doing that. In a former life, I was a scout in the NBA. I was the chief scout for the San Diego Rockets, and I scouted for the Phoenix Suns. And what I would do is go out and look at college players and evaluate them and come back and tell management how well I thought they might do in the NBA. So my team of 8 does a similar type thing. They're not watching basketball games, but they're looking for that needle in the haystack, that person that stands out, and to see if they think that person would be a good fit for our clients who are looking to fill a role of a VP of sales or a COO or financial analyst, whatever that might be. We say you can't build a great company without great people, and it's pretty obvious. You'll hear from the panelists in a minute when they introduce themselves about what they think is important in an investment for them, and team is always prominent in that. We also have a very unique model. We call it employees without paychecks. We are able to find people who will work for the first 3 months or so of their employment at a company, actually as consultants, and they'll work startup hours full-time, 60, 70 hours for equity only. These are people who will not get a paycheck those first 3 months, but they're willing to work for a company, and instead of getting whatever their base salary is going to be, $6,000 a month base. They'll take that in equity. Once the company closes its seed round or A round, they go on the payroll. To the best of my knowledge, there's nobody else in the world that has a model like that, and it's served us very well. And we'd love to be able to help you grow your team if you've got a startup, or if you're looking at investing in a startup and you think, boy, if that there's a brilliant guy who came founder, but he knows nothing about, with great technical skills, but he knows nothing about how to build a company. And we find CEOs to fill positions like that. So please keep us in mind for that. Pitch Force, in addition to going this afternoon, once a week, usually on Thursdays, this week and next week on Tuesday, we alternate between companies pitching for their A round, like the 5 companies you'll see today, companies pitching for their seed round. We alternate that over a 4-week period. And the 5th week is cannabis only, companies that might be looking for their seed round or their A round. So if you're in the market for funding, or you know somebody is, please let them know. We'd love to have them join us. Before we get started, I've got the pleasure of doing a fireside chat with Kevin Kamak. You know, as you'll see when you hear the panelists today, we're surrounded by, and I am in my daily life, around a lot of really smart people. You know, 6 of whom are on the panel today. But Kevin certainly falls in that category. Kevin has a PhD from Cal. He did postdoc work at Caltech, and then just to round off who he is, he went and got an MBA from Stanford. So a very bright guy. And what Kevin does today is he helps startups get funding through government grants. Kevin, welcome, and thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Max. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you. Tell us a little bit about how you got into this business. You're a serial entrepreneur. You've done startups before. Aegis Creek is your company, and tell us why you're helping companies get funding through government grants, please.
Yeah. So, well, I started off as a scientist and then discovered I love entrepreneurship, and I like strategic sales quite a bit. And, you know, when I was doing entrepreneurship, I realized I just like technology in general. So rather than trying to be focused on building one company and taking it to success, you know, I thought, well, I've raised a lot of money over my career both as a scientist and an entrepreneur and a consultant. I've raised a lot of money from government for startups, and it can be transformative. I have a friend and a former colleague who floated a company called Nanosys entirely on government grants, almost all the way to IPO. And, you know, they were at one point, I think, doing $10 or $12 million a year in grants, and it really drove that company to success. So, you know, in the last 5 years, I worked as a management consultant. I helped roughly 20 companies raise just south of $150 million for R&D from government, but they were large companies. And I thought, well, you know, I can take all of this experience that I've got helping these large companies manage the transition from technology to product, and apply that to entrepreneurs, and that'll kind of give me my fix, right, for entrepreneurship and lots of different tech. I'm just really happy to be able to be out there and make other people successful by doing good, right?
It's a real win-win. What are some of the unique capabilities that Aegis Creek brings to this non-dilutive funding world?
Right. So there's a couple of things. So first, the team here actually has a unique approach and a unique set of skills. So we've got experience with almost every government agency there is. So, you know, from DOD to EPA to NIH to USAID, and we understand the priorities of each agency. So we can find grants and opportunities that other people might not find or might be very difficult to find. So, for example, DOD right now is a very well-funded grant program. It's about $290 million worth of funding in this grant program to address some specific diseases. And these range from arthritis to women's heart disease. And there's a whole lot of things in between. And, you know, unless you would know to look for these kind of things, I don't think anybody that's in the healthcare industry is going to look to DoD to fund endometriosis development or therapy, endometriosis therapy development or research, right? It's just doesn't make sense, right? And then second, we're a full service management consultancy. So, there's a lot of people that are out there that'll saying they're going to help you with funding in one way or another. And, in the world of grants, the very competent people are either going to be typically either rainmakers or grant writers. Unlike them, we bring strategic sales experience, we bring business development experience, and we bring technology experience in each individual that's part of the company to the table. And, we understand how to sell technology. So we're also invested in your success across the board. So everything that we do with you as a startup is intended to make for a positive ROI, regardless of whether or not we actually get funding from the grant. So, if we develop collateral and you reuse it in your pitch deck and take it to investors, that should, it should really improve your game with your investors. And similarly, we often leverage the grant process to close deals with strategic partners who are otherwise a little bit, gun shy about working with startups. But if there's a project in front of them that might get funded, you can go a long way in developing that relationship before anything gets funded. And often that continues if it's not. And then last, just so you know, every member of our team, like I said, has a combination of skills, which is kind of unusual in the business world. So everybody's got some strategic sales and business development experience, and they've all come from a technology development background. So that means we know how to craft compelling technology sales and investment pitch documents, which is basically what a grant application is. And we'll teach you guys how to do it.
Cool. What are some opportunities for non-dilutive funding that you're aware of that others may not be?
Well, so right now, actually, there's quite a few opportunities out there. As I mentioned, there's the congressionally directed medical research programs through DoD. That's the one with $290 million for medical research. But also coming up right now, there's the DoD SBIRs that were just published, and they're closing on June 17th, so that the timing is pretty good. There's some open topics. So this is interesting because a lot of people will look at DoD and look at SBIR topics in general, and they'll be very specific. The DoD wants a specific kind of tire for a particular vehicle, or they want a technology to load cargo in an airplane, right? Like a Tetris thing. But in this case, there's an open topic this time around, and it's for AFWERX, which they pay you. They give you $50,000, which isn't much, but it's just to go sell. So it's $50,000, and they open up their phone books and their contacts, and they invite you to talk to people in the military, and it's a chance you really don't get unless you participate, right? Then after that, there's NSF and NIH coming up in September. In EPA and USDA will release topics typically in June. So there's a lot going on, and we're also expecting, if and when the infrastructure bill gets passed, on the last two stimulus bills, there were huge amounts of money, hundreds of billions of dollars for emerging technologies, and that's going to continue to be the case. And so when an infrastructure bill gets passed, the government is going to be scrambling to give out this money. And it's really important to be well positioned at that time to respond better than everybody else and put yourself at the top of the list. So.
Great. Can you give us examples of some successful projects that you've worked on recently?
Yeah, sure. So the one I'm most proud of actually is one of my first clients that I took on. So I worked with a company that was developing a desktop integrated circuit manufacturing technology. And as you can imagine, normally a semiconductor fab is hundreds of meters on the side, thousands tens of thousands of square feet or hundreds of thousands of square feet, right? And they're really complicated with huge equipment. And these guys were doing it in a 1 meter package, the whole deal. But what was interesting was I took them to NSF and we pitched them to NSF, but we were pitching them on a project that was wafer bonding. And if you know anything about semiconductor manufacturing, that's just soldering. It's like the most boring, least sexy, least scientific kind of thing you can imagine, right? And NSF is all about, I want high risk, high return, sexy science, that kind of thing. So, you know, I crafted a pitch with them and took what they had, which wasn't terribly compelling, because they were focusing on how unsexy wafer bonding is, and we focused more on the outcomes, how it was going to change the world, and why this was so key to making this whole thing work. Anyway, we got a call back from the PM after they had scored the applications. We got to do another interview with them. I coached them through that, and we wrote a script for them, and we actually landed the grant. So they were one of the top scoring companies for this really boring, tedious technology. So that was it was a fun time. And I think if I can sell, the point is, if I can sell wafer bonding to NSF, trust me, we can sell anything to anyone.
That's a great story. Rob, I really enjoy you spending a few minutes with us. We're going to have your email address in chat if anybody wants to get in touch with you. And if you're listening and missed that, just email me, max@peopleconnectstaffing.com. We'll put you in touch. I think it's so great what you do in helping companies the way that you do. And investors, of course, like non-dilutive funding. So it's a win-win. Thank you again, and best of luck to you with Aegis Creek and what you do.
Thanks. Great
you.
talking to you, Max.
Thank you. So before we begin, I'd like you to meet our panelists. And this is really an exceptional panel. We've got 6 savvy investors here. And we're going to start off with F. Lindenbaum. F and I have known each other for about 20 years. Been a very successful entrepreneur, and then he became a very successful venture capitalist. And he's based in the Valley, as you can see his background looking out over Silicon Valley. Welcome, F. Tell us a little bit about Advanced Ventures, please.
Thank you so much, Max. It's great to be here today with a great panel. Really appreciate it. So my name is Ephraim Lindenbaum. I'm the Managing Director of Advanced Ventures. I'm a recovering entrepreneur, so I sat on the other side of the table with most of the folks who'll be pitching today. Spent the first third of my career building a company here in Silicon Valley, and then exited in the first .com boom back in 1999. And it's somewhat binary when you exit in the Valley as an entrepreneur. You either start your next startup or default and become an investor. I jokingly say I didn't have any great ideas at the time, but really I found a great team of partners to spin up Advance with. So we kicked off in 1999. So we've been investing now for almost 22 years. And it means we're either pretty good at what we do or total gluttons for punishment. But we've been investing across the technology, health, and wellness category now. We've had an exit about every 18 months since the beginning of our fund, and been working with Max and People Connect since 2003, believe it or not, and work with them as we speak. So it's a little bit of our background. We invest in early stage companies, traditionally what we'd call late seed or Series A. We look for companies that have a minimum viable product, a core team in place, and their first customer traction, whether that's paid or otherwise. That's the kind of critical element to us to help make a decision. Today, we're investing mostly across digital health, financial technology, food, and agriculture. Thanks so much, Max.
Thanks for being here. It's my pleasure now to ask Sandy Miller to talk a little bit about herself. I've known Sandy for a number of years, really got to know her when she took over as the head of a Runway Innovation Lab hub a couple of years ago in a beautiful 30,000 square foot facility right on the 5th floor of the Twitter building. And she's been an investor. She's done a lot of things in the startup world. And Sandy, tell us please a little bit more about yourself and a little bit about Runway. Runway is a sponsor of Pitchforce and People Connect, and what you're looking for in an investment, please.
Great. So just to give you some background, excuse me, about Runway, we think of ourselves as an innovation company, and we focus on accelerating the success of global enterprises and entrepreneurs. Specifically, what we do with global enterprises is results-focused innovation consulting, and we we power the growth of startups through our acceleration programs, mentorship, and workspace services. And so we've been around since Runway was founded in 2013. And so that means that we've had, in looking at more than 7 years now of the activity of companies who've been Runway members, we have some, that number is about 350. And in that cohort, we have 53 of those companies have exits. Majority of those have been through acquisition. The other thing that's pretty interesting is we usually hear that, maybe 1 to 2 out of 10 startups actually survives longer term. When we looked at our survivability, we have at about 76% of our members are still alive and kicking today. So that's really cool. And they've raised a lot of money, as you can imagine. In aggregate, it's nearly $3.5 billion. So just to give you a sense of the scope and the scale, I think it's helpful to look at that distance over time. A little bit about me personally is I have worked in technology based startups for the majority of my career. And a lot of that early on was in the healthcare space, specifically medical devices at Stanford, where I co-founded the Stanford Biodesign, what's now Center. And that program was actually endowed a few years by Brooke Byers of Kleiner Perkins. So that's a nice little seal of approval. And that program has really teaches a methodology around, a predictable methodology around innovation and invention in the biomedical technology space. And so there are many, many companies that have come out of not only the Stanford program now, but also there are several programs around the world that are following that model. So it's really fun, in what I do today at Runway and some of my other work. I've been on the investor side, but also helping corporates sort of engage with startups. And then I've also been on the, working with people who are starting from a blank sheet of paper and trying to, make their way through that pipeline. So I've been fortunate to have a lot of cool experiences and exposure, and have worked with well over 1,000 startups over the years who are in various stages of that journey. So I'm pleased to be here. Thanks.
Pleased to have you here. Thank you so much. Now I'd like to introduce my good friend, Garrett Gilbertson. Garrett and I worked together a couple years ago in Los Angeles, put some pitch forces on, and Garrett does a ton of work in the startup community in LA and Silicon Beach, as they call it. He's a former Air Force Academy graduate and officer and has an MBA. And Garrett, talk a little bit about yourself and Startup Mavericks and the Band of Angels, please.
Well, thanks a lot, Max. Yeah, it was always great to participate in Pitch Force events. It's been a great source of deal flow, both for our group over the years, as well as for a number of the funds that I've actually worked with too. So always appreciate coming back. As Max mentioned, my name is Garrett. I was an officer in the Air Force for a number of years, got out, launched a startup, then went on to run a family office and then a corporate VC. Now I'm the chair of the Band of Angels in LA. Over the past few years, I've made, I think, last count, 23 seed stage, primarily startup investments, and really just enjoy these events because it's a nice opportunity to look at industry agnostic, just opportunities. As Max also discussed earlier, very much a founder-focused investor, and really focused my efforts on building relationships with founders, getting to know them over a period of time, understanding what their next fundable milestones are, and making sure that they have the right resources around them to execute. So if you want to, some examples of that recently, a company called Unest, which is one of the fastest growing fintech companies out here in LA. Met the founder a couple of years ago, started working with her early on. She quickly closed her first $2 million seed raise, then went on to raise a seed extension, then a Series A. Around that time, I joined the board of directors, and now we're in the midst of a Series B and have a number of stories like that in different verticals. And it's all largely thanks to just building a great network and being able to participate in awesome events like this and finding talented founders. So I look forward to seeing what we have to offer today and giving a little bit of feedback along with this fantastic panel.
Thanks, Garrett. Thanks for being here. I'd like to welcome in now Gary Goldman, the guy who's got too many letters after his name: DDS, MD, MBA, VC. Seriously. Gary, tell us a little bit about yourself, please.
Yeah, thanks, Max. Great to see everybody. So yeah, I've got 35 years in healthcare, pretty much wearing every hat you could possibly wear, from dentist to physician to serial entrepreneur to heading up as an informaticist a 27 hospital Epic implementation. And then subsequently, the most recent thing is I am now the founder and CEO of Global Health Impact Fund, Global Health Impact Network. We're a clinician funded, founded, managed, and driven global network focused around healthcare innovation. On our fund side, we for Fund 1, which we're about to close, we raised $10 million, and our focus was digital health with a check size of about $250 to $1.5 million. And then we leverage our global network, which is a separate entity, to then act as almost an accelerator for the portfolio companies that we invest in. And we're also very focused on promoting active participation by clinicians in the digital health revolution as investors, advisors, consultants, just actively playing a role.
Great. Thank you so much. Our next investor, happy to welcome him back for the second time, Josh Silber. Josh has got his own fund that he started, Tuscan Management, and he's been a very successful advisor, entrepreneur. Josh, tell us a little bit about yourself and what your focus is on at Tuscan.
Sure. Thanks for the kind words, Max. So yeah, Tuscan Management, we're based here in San Francisco. We are family office here, and while we do venture as sort of our primary day-to-day, we have some real estate and other related activities, which from time to time can be synergistic. But what gets us excited and gets us up and moving every day is our focus on venture investing. We've got a pretty diverse team of talent here at Tuscan, but what it generally means for our investment focus is early stage technology, often, if not always, hardware or hardware-enabled businesses. So you won't necessarily see us investing in the next Facebook, although, joke's on us, I suppose. But certainly where there's core intellectual property and where if you can build it, we know there's a good market for it. So that tends to translate for us involvement in industrial-focused technologies, enterprise, often in material sciences, ag tech, healthcare, not usually on the biopharma side, though, because we don't pretend to know it at all. But hopefully that gives you a little flavor for things. So we tend to invest where we feel like we have some value we can add above and beyond our capital. We're hands-on investors. That's not necessarily a great fit for everybody, but where it is, we're very excited to partner up with the team and help them grow their business.
Great. Thanks for being here. Our sixth and final panelist, Cezary Petrasik, is an investment banker as well as a startup entrepreneur based here in San Francisco. Welcome, Cezary.
Hi, everyone. Pleasure to be here. So my path is probably a reverse of what most entrepreneurs is. I was first the investor, then I started my company afterwards. And I wear many hats in the meantime. So I started with McKinsey, and I was an investment banker with JP Morgan. I was helping orchestrate deals in ST Microelectronics and other large transactions at the time in early 2000s in Europe, in London. Then I moved to private equity, was helping large companies get even larger and then either get listed or bought out by strategic investors. So I know where to go, what is the ultimate goal for startups to be bought at. However, a few years back, I decided I want to change and I want to do something on my own instead of working for large institutions. I started a health tech company, digital health company here in San Francisco, but I still invest from time to time in interesting concepts, companies in the fields I'm familiar with. And I really love whenever there's an opportunity for exceptional, spectacular return, that's what typically attracts me the most, and obviously the team and the group that is running this.
Got it. Great. Thank you for being here. We're going to start the 1-minute elevator pitches now. And I know Isaac Stoner is joining us late, and he might be here early as well. Is Isaac here, Adrian?
He's here.
Yeah. Okay, good. So Isaac Stoner with Octagon Therapeutics will be first on the 1-minute elevator pitch. And Isaac, when you're ready, we'll be ready for you.
Sure. Thanks much, Matt. I'm Isaac Stoner. I'm leading Octagon Therapeutics. Octagon is a preclinical stage biotech developing a new class of targeted medicines for chronic autoimmune disease. The company was founded by myself. This is actually my 4th go around as an entrepreneur. I've been through 2 previous exits, and 2 gentlemen out of Harvard who have joined the company full time. Our current lead drug is in animal testing. It looks really good in animal immunology models, and it's quite safe. We have executed our first pharma partnership with a major multinational pharmaceutical company, and we've raised around $4 million in seed convertible debt to date. We're located right in Kendall Square next to MIT, which is where I did my MBA. We're literally across the street from Moderna and next to Pfizer. It's a really exciting zip code to be in. So we are raising a $1.5 million seed extension. Around $1.2 million of that has closed. We have limited allocation left, and we'd love to talk to anyone who might be interested in the opportunity.
Great. All right. Panel, if you're ready to vote, and I just got a text from Garrett. Garrett, if you're going to be able to vote, that would be good on this time. And I know you may not be able to on other times, but on the count of 3, if you vote, 5 is high, 1 is low. 1, 2, 3.
All right, I have 3 4s and 3 3s, and that puts us at 21.
Very nice score. Okay. Thank you very much, Isaac. Next up will be David Schaub from Huntington Beach with Airbridge Technologies. Welcome, David. David, you're muted.
Boy, why does it happen? Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Sorry about that. I'll start again. Did you know that by 2025, over 800 million smartphone users around the world will not have access to the internet? Why? It's because of the ROI. I'm Dave Shoup, a founder and CEO of Airbridge Technologies. I've spent my career solving problems like this all around the world. Airbridge delivers connectivity and coverage at a cost that changes the game for telecoms. Our software creates centrally managed cellular backhaul and Wi-Fi mesh networking capable of supporting thousands of users at a cap cost of less than 3% of the cost of expanding a cellular network's footprint. Our goal is to connect over 2 million new internet users by 2023 and create a valuable business for our telecom partners and investors. Our team of international business experts has extensive track record of developing, deploying, and exiting disruptive businesses for the last 3 decades. Airbridge started in December, and we've raised $500,000 in seed capital and have completed MVP. We're currently in the process of raising an additional $2 million to scale out our product channels in preparation for commercial launch in October. Thank you.
Thank you. Right on time. Okay, you guys ready to vote? 1, 2, 3.
All right, I have a 1 4, 3, 4 3s, and a 2, and that puts us at 18.
Okay, thank you. All right, next up from Maine, on his way to Boston soon, Sam Bogach with Axle AI. Welcome, Sam.
Thanks. Great to be here. So we're Axle AI, and we're making video smarter. What does that mean? Well, over the next 3 to 5 years, nearly all video that's captured professionally is going to become smart. It's going to be enhanced with AI-driven tags and metadata to make it much easier to reuse. And we're an early leader in this space. You can think of us as kind of a Google Docs for video with integrated transcription, face recognition, and other tagging and searching features. So before this, I ran the workgroup software division at Avid, which is kind of a stealth billion-dollar company on the East Coast. And at Axle, we've been able to capture customers like Madison Square Garden, the LA Clippers, Ellen DeGeneres Show, and the New York Yankees. We're mostly bootstrapped. We've done 400,000 in revenues this year, up from 660,000 for all of last year. We've turned down 2 acquisition offers in the last 18 months, and the second was from a publicly traded company. There's been a lot of M&A in our space, but we're looking forward to staying a leader and building the company to a more significant exit.
Thanks, Sam. Okay, you guys ready to vote? 1, 2, 3. Oh, we got our first 5.
I have a 5 and 3 4s and 2 3s. And that puts us at 23.
23?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, next up, let's welcome in Jack Dwan with Gliding Eagle. Welcome, Jack.
Okay. Hi, I'm Jack. I'm here to present Eagle One API to answer one question. Where's my order in global supply chain? Solving 2 problems, data automation and data connectivity. We intend to connect over 500,000 freight forwarders around the world. For the last few years, we tracked over $9 million of wine around the world, and we're ranked the #1 startup on IBM.com. My background, technology. Some ecosystem, system architect, and also at Safeway, big data product manager. Our investors include former executives from McKesson. Now we're raising Series A, $5 million to build out next generation system, much more scalable around the world. Just like Stripe has done to make it so simple to make payments, we do the same thing for tracking product around the world. Thank you.
Thanks, Jack. Okay, you guys ready to vote? 1, 2, 3. Another 5. Wow.
All right, I have a 5, 2 4s, and 3 3s. And that puts us at a 22.
Good score. Thanks. Very nice score, Jack. Okay, our last presenter in the first round, David Benno with Zeno Biosciences. Welcome, David.
Hello, sorry, I'm finally here. Hi.
Yeah. Hi.
So gastric bypass surgery causes a 30% weight loss in obese people. Zeno Biosciences is developing a pill that will mimic that effect, that is safe and tolerated without the surgery. So we have animal and human data to back this up. And the key to understanding this is that the microbiome, the bacteria in your intestine, changes with gastric bypass surgery, and we are able to find a safe way to mimic that, as I said, that is well tolerated and effective. Now, the key to this for us is that we have preliminary human data for our program, and very few companies have this, and they cannot claim this. So we're raising $6 million to conduct a clinical study. We're IND ready. We're backed by protective IP, and we're looking at a 50-fold return for this investment. And I'm David Benno, and I look forward to telling you more about gastric bypass and a pill later.
Thanks very much. Okay, you guys ready to vote? 1, 2, 3.
All right, I have 2 3 4s and 3 3s, and that puts us at a 21.
Okay, Adrian, if you could give us the scores for the first round, please.
Yeah, so we have Airbridge Technologies with 18, Axle AI with 23, Gliding Eagle 22, Octagon Therapeutics 21, and Zeno Biosciences 21.
A lot of good scores, but the winner with 23 points is Axle AI. So congratulations to Sam. You finished first place in the first round, the one with elevator pitches. We're now going to switch to the second round. All 5 companies will do a 4-minute PowerPoint, 4 minutes of questions and answers, and then about 8 minutes of non-rebuttal feedback. And I believe that Garrett's not going to be able to join us for the voting on this, but we appreciate his being here. And we'll get started first with Dave Schaub with Airbridge Technologies. Welcome back, Dave, and pull your screen up when you can, please. You're muted.
Yep, no, I figured that one out from the last time around. Thanks.
Now we do the screen share. All right, boy, that's a record for getting your screen up quickly. That's good. We're ready. We're ready when you are, Dave. Please begin.
Okay, so Airbridge set out to solve a fairly complex problem. You know, by 2025, over 800 million smartphone users will not have access to the internet. This is because they live on the fringe or in the gaps of network coverage. Cellular carriers are not filling these areas because it's all about the ROI. They do not build cell sites where they're not going to make money. So we set out to figure out how to solve this. So we developed patent pending technology that takes normal everyday data modems and turns them into backhaul devices and mesh networking devices. So we're able to very, very cost effectively deploy local networks in remote areas or even in holes of coverage and backhaul it back into the cellular network with the cost being about 3 to 4% of the cost of deploying a new cell site per concurrent user. What this does is this opens up a number of things. First of all, the services that they can get through connectivity. If you think about developing countries, especially telemedicine, education, e-commerce, fintech, agritech, all need backhaul. They all need to be able to connect to the internet to be effective. And that's what we do. In developed areas, it's filling the holes and providing services that are wireless enabled rather than wired enabled. One question I always get is, okay, what about the elephant room? And that's Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos and LEO satellites. Well, it doesn't tick the box of cost effective. They're having to deploy thousands of low Earth orbit satellites. And by the time they're done, the CapEx that they will have invested in it will make it virtually impossible for them to hit the cost barrier that you need to hit to be able to especially deploy in developing areas of the world. They can cover it, but they can't sell it. So we'll be fine in that particular case. And so our initial target is looking at areas where there is this largest gap, Sub-Saharan Africa, Latin America, and Europe. Our goal is to cover off 2 million users by the end of 2023. That's 0.8% of the total accessible market in 2 years. We make money through firmware license fees on the devices and through service transaction fees, through telecom carriers, energy providers, and other third-party service providers. We've assembled a team that is really experienced at this. I myself have been in wireless telecom and software for over 30 years and have worked in 27 different countries and lived in 4 different countries. Our team is comprised of people with the same type of diverse background, ranging from telecom to social impact, Africa politics, and business development. And the team, as people have said, is the most important starting point. We started in December. We've raised $500,000. We have MVP working. We have integrated services working. We're now in the process of due diligence with a major global telecom partner, which we'll be able to announce in another month or so. And we'll start our initial pilots in July 2021 with commercial launch in October. We expect to be cash flow positive within 4 quarters of commercial launch. As I said before, 2 million users by end of 2023 and annual revenue by 2025 of 250 mil. So in summary, we've got a clear opportunity and need. We've got a target of 250 million users to go after in both developed and developing countries. We're cost effective. We're the cheapest game in town when it comes to extending cellular coverage. We have a really, really strong and experienced team, and the financial opportunities there. We're looking for 2 million in equity financing. Thank you.
Thank you. Right on time. Thank you for covering so many of our points. Okay, we are ready for questions. And who's got a question? Yes, Sandy, please, and then Cesare. Sandy.
Hi, Dave. Really nice job. I appreciated your slide where you spoke to sort of different global markets and the relative market opportunities there. My question is which, and whether it's those outside the US or sort of doing that, filling the gap in between in perhaps the US, which market are you going after first and why?
We're being drug a few different directions by partners. So we have one partner in Kenya that is focused on the developing areas because that's their greatest need there. They're actually a smart meter company and they need to extend their reach. And the only one, even using LoRaWAN, for people who know what that is, low frequency radio, they still have to connect to the internet, and that's what we do. In the case of developed areas, the telecom that we're working with actually wants to use us to provide secure connectivity to businesses and to fill in holes of coverage in developed areas, starting in the UK. Little clue there. And here in the United States, we're working through the Bureau of Indian Affairs and starting to work with the Indian nations to bring connectivity to schools and medical clinics on Indian reservations where they don't have connectivity. That's a basic application of our product. But so we're really going where the need takes us. And we can scale this way because we're working only through channel partners. We're not doing any distribution directly.
Got it. Thank you. Cesare.
And a technical question: by how much does your technology extend the size of the average cell? And of what is the alternative kind of cost of, I would call it like alternative base station, whatever. Like, I think that what I've seen on this picture on the last page is kind of your kind of low cost base station. How much does it cost?
Deploying a cellular cell site costs about $500 per concurrent user. So if you're going to cover 300 concurrent users, which is a normal cell site implementation, it's about 150 in cap cost. Plus you have to provide electricity. Consumes a lot of electricity. Our site for a similar 300 concurrent deployment runs right around $3,000 to $4,000. Okay, and it takes about 2% of the energy to run.
Any other questions? Yes, F, please.
Sure. So I think it's very, very interesting. I mean, this is a problem that a lot of folks have been trying to solve for a long time. Talk to me a little bit about its application in IoT devices. You know, one of the challenges in ag tech, food tech, other areas like that, we lose cellular connectivity, but that's critical for the data. So if you could talk about the package price in a small environment, and then, you know, extrapolate on the power usage. Is this a, you know, AAA battery that's going to last 3 years or something similar with the lithium cell? If you could speak to that briefly, that'd be helpful.
Yeah, so what we would call single point backhaul, meaning going out to a farm, requires 2 AirBridge units, which is the capital cost of the device is around $300 for 2 of them, because it's a multi-path device. Each unit requires about a 5 amp hour solar system to run. That's small. So to be able to survive monsoons, bad inclement weather, things like that. And the range is about 80 to 100 kilometers from the nearest cell site. And then the Wi-Fi transmission capabilities is line of sight into a farm. And you can also connect it via LAN to a LoRa transceiver to hit IoT sensors in ag tech.
Okay, thank you.
We're out of time for questions. We're going to switch to feedback. So Dave, if you would mute yourself now, that would be great. And we'll go in the following order. It's going to be F, Sandy, Gary, Josh, and then Cesare. And as I said, Garrett will not be participating in the feedback on this round. So F, your feedback first, please.
Thank you, David. So I thought that was a great presentation. You really laid it out well. I mean, I think this is very much and what we call an ESG type investment for emerging markets. That's very, very interesting. You know, the reason why I was asking about IoT and particularly farms, et cetera, is, you know, that is a hot market. However, you know, there is a lot of mesh network competition out there. They've certainly been able to get the shrink down to a lower price point. I would have liked to have seen you know, more competitive matrix with other folks that are out there. There's also ultra wideband that's kind of nipping at your heels, and all different sort of approaches to this problem, some of which are much, much cheaper. So I really would have liked you to compare a little more of that. But otherwise, I really thought it was a great presentation. I think this is really something that, from an infrastructure story, it sounds like you're talking to the right people in the US. I'd love to see you work with social impact funds to extend this model around the world.
Great. Thanks, F. Sandy?
So Dave, and this is something that I think everybody who's watching can take note of. First of all, I want to give you like huge credit for your slides, because I can only imagine how long it took to get your messaging as clear as it was in terms of how it works, why it's better, all of that. So overall, your slides are really good. What I'm going to focus on for feedback is your answer to my question. And so from, again, you know, this is an investor presentation, and in that context, you know, I was testing for something, and I wanted to hear you speaking to which market you were focusing on and why, because the answer I wanted to hear is that we've identified, you know, going after X is what we're going to do first because it's the best business opportunity, right? In terms of building, or it, you know, it accomplishes something so significant from a value add to the company because, you know, granted, you have an incredibly talented team, but it is still a smaller team. And you're talking about managing complex relationships and networks and government regulations in Africa and, you know, and these other things. And so it wasn't really the best answer in some ways to that question. So I want to hear, you know, more clearly, because it's like, it makes an investor sort of think, gee, how are they gonna, it's probably hard for them to execute well on all these fronts. And so it makes me a little nervous that there's just not this clear-eyed focus to get, you know, get this next thing going on. Now, certainly I appreciate that, you know, you're having conversations and exploring, you don't know what's gonna fit first, but in terms of those conversations with investors and speaking to what they're wanting to hear from you, that's one thing I think you could improve on a little bit there. That focus and decision-making and understanding your criteria for decision-making in terms of that market focus is an important part of an investor's decision in going with you.
Thanks, Sandy. Gary, please.
Thanks for that presentation. I think, you know, from my perspective, I don't have a lot of knowledge on this particular subject, but I do know the problem and understand it from a healthcare perspective. I think that your presentation addressed, from my perspective, all of the appropriate points that I needed. It was concise. I agree with Sandy. Your slides are excellent. They really do deliver the message in a very concise, clear way. I'd be very interested, you know, again, I'll have a savant's approach to this from a healthcare perspective. You know, this is a very, very important area moving forward because, you know, as we deliver more and more healthcare to the point of care, you know, and leveraging telemedicine, bandwidth becomes a very important point, and access to those remote places is very important. I'd like to, you know, have gotten a little bit more out of that, but that's a particular individual request.
Thank you. Josh.
Sure. I don't think I have much to add on this one. I think it was a pretty solid presentation. I think if you could get into the unit economics a little bit more in terms of just a kind of a straightforward layman's version of this is why it's better. I think qualitatively you spoke to it, but I think if you can just put some simple metrics around it, that probably helps it be digestible to a broader market. I'm familiar with some companies like Airden Communications and some others that I think are playing in a similar space. So it might just also be helpful to talk about just the spectrum of alternatives on a simple slide, and just sort of say if you're complementary or competitive.
Thank you. Cesare.
This is a very interesting space, very huge market need and potentially huge market. There's companies which recently got to through the SPAC mergers, such as AST Mobile, and like garnered more than $1 billion valuation for doing what you want to do from satellite, right? Your technology seems to be much cheaper, more accessible, easier. And my feedback is, so I really enjoyed the 4 minute presentation, much more than the 1 minute. After 1 minute, I didn't get enough, or after 1 minute, I didn't understood it well enough. That's why I gave you 2. Right now, after 4 minutes, I'm gonna give you 4 at least, because I think it's a very interesting business. Just make sure that you, whenever you get your 1 minute pitch, it's just people who even understand it, they get it, because I didn't get it in the 1 minute pitch. I was not convinced enough. So please try to hone your 1 minute version, because if you're given only that amount of time, it might not be as powerful as your longer version.
Great, thank you. All right, we're going to vote again on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3.
All right, I have four fours and a 3.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody.
Max, did you want to average it out or just just go with 5?
That will be all 5. Only
okay.
5. So that's 19, huh?
Correct.
Okay.
Or, no, yes, correct. 19. Sorry.
Okay, good. All right, thanks. Very, very nice score, Dave. And next up, we're going to welcome back Sam with Axle AI.
Okay, can you guys see my desktop?
We can see the desktop.
All right.
Yes.
Here we go with the slideshow. All right. So thanks for the excellent scores on the first go round. Hopefully I can live up to that on this one. Basically what we do, as I mentioned, is we make video smarter. Our customers start with piles of hard drives full of video, similar to what you see here. And they need to make sense of it because social media is pulling them in the direction where they have to repurpose that video continuously and in a much more agile way than they've done in the past. Now, we've got some amazing customers. These are some of our customers today, including Madison Square Garden, New York Yankees, Elevation Church, which is a big church in South Carolina, the BBC, City of New York, State of New York, California Department of Justice. So it's a very eclectic group, but what they have in common is that the video teams in all these organizations function very similarly. And basically, they're all about capturing the video and putting it to work for the organizations that they support. Our team is pretty awesome. We have 23 people, most of them outside the US. We've been able to leverage a lot of low cost, highly technical folks in areas like coding and technical support, but our core team has decades of industry experience. As I mentioned, I ran a division inside a company where we were able to triple the business over 5 years. Neil Blake, who runs Europe for us, worked for me in that business. I've known Alex for a long time as well. And Patrice is just a very talented VP of products at this point. And Katie is doing our operations. So we've got a tremendous team as well as some really high-powered advisors. Let me just quickly walk you through what the software does to give you a feel for this. Essentially, it's a browser interface. You can go through, you can click on a particular part of your footage. You can scrub through that. You can search there, of course, but you can also tag it yourself. And then there's automatic AI-driven annotations. Who's in the video, what they said, the transcript of what they said. So all of that becomes searchable. And this is what we mean by smart video. All of a sudden, these piles of video become manageable and reusable in a tremendously efficient way. Behind this all is the fact that working with video today is like working in a cave. There's very little support for what these folks do, and the technology is really primitive. That being said, the number of people doing this type of work is expected to double over the next 4 years. So it's a hot thing, and yet the infrastructure is very poor. As you've seen, this is kind of what our user interface looks like. We try and keep it very kind of iCloud or Google Cloud-like. There's a huge market. People spend currently a little less than 10 billion, but over the next few years, well over $15 billion on storage to house all this video. And by the way, we're at the intersection of 3 spaces, AI on the one hand, video on the other, and remote work, each of which is growing at a more than 40% CAGR. So we think we're in a kind of white hot spot. One of our customers is American Public Television. They were able to work remotely within a matter of hours based on our software when they got hit by COVID, in Boston, like everyone else did about a year ago. And the value proposition is that we don't force people to change what they're already doing. We essentially leverage the infrastructure that they have and whatever mix of on-premise and cloud storage that they have. We've done some bundles with very prominent storage companies, including NetApp, who's an industry leader. Those bundles are resulting in additional sales, both in the government and private sectors. As I mentioned, we've done 400,000 year to date. We're running about double the revenues that we had this time last year.
Sam, you're out of time. Sam, your
okay.
your 4 minutes are up. Okay,
Sorry about that. Thanks.
We're going to switch to questions. Okay, who's got a question? Yes, F, please.
Yeah, Sam. So super impressive, great presentation. So this is a category that is getting pretty crowded. Maybe you could speak to. We didn't see a lot of competitive matrix stuff in there. There are a lot of your former colleagues from Avid and many of the other digital video companies that are kind of out there attempting this or in-house at Google now. Maybe you could speak to some of the competition, please.
Yeah, our competition comes from a couple of or several quadrants. There's bigger companies that are enterprise solutions, but they're very expensive and cumbersome. There's a whole new wave of cloud-only solutions, but we really have a unique edge in that we're hybrid cloud, and we straddle the worlds of their cloud storage and their on-premise storage. That and the fact that we've spent about 80 person years on the technology stack at this point. So we feel like we have a defensible amount of momentum in the space. Obviously, there's no guarantees of anything, but so far so good.
And you didn't explain your business model. Could you spend a minute or two talking about the economics?
Yes, it's a hybrid model. There's an upfront setup cost and then a SaaS long tail of subscription revenue for each sale.
And what's the price point per seat then?
The average lifetime value of each customer is between $15,000 and $20,000.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Gary, I think you had your hand up next.
Yeah, I did. So great presentation, really. I mean, thanks. Fascinating area, especially as it relates to education. So, I mean, the application for this is potentially all over the map. So from a focus perspective, now that you've got the technology in place, is there a vertical in which you're focusing on initially?
Yeah, we've actually chosen sports. We've done well there with a dozen or so customers, and we just received an investment from the Stadia Sports Tech Accelerator, which is actually the leading sports tech investment group in North America. So we're going hard after the leagues, the venues, and the teams right now, and we think that vertical will kind of help drive our growth for the next 18, 24 months.
Thanks. You got my attention, by the way. I'm a varsity college hockey player.
Oh, great. Sheer luck. What can I say?
Any other questions? If not, we will switch to feedback, and it's going to be Sandy, Gary, Josh, Cesare, and we'll finish up with F. Sandy, you're up first this round, please.
Well, Sam, one sort of obviously you ran out of time, and so that was challenging because of you didn't sort of get to end on a strong note. I have to say, I actually understand sort of the video editing and all of that pretty well. And I still felt like I wasn't really sure how you were really changing things and sort of a specific advantage for your users and customers, and I sort of logically I can sort of guess at that, but I think it would have been helpful to speak to one or two bullet points to just hit it has this cost savings or it allows this, so that though I'm not having to guess and make assumptions. Overall a nice presentation. I think it can be tightened up a little bit. And I think the other thing I sort of felt like as you were going through this is, it was more about the background, and sort of understanding the whole thing versus the business opportunity. So I just think if you can shift some of your emphasis more to the business side of things, that will serve you well. I mean, granted, very nice overall, but I think that will help you go from good to, really strong presentation.
Great feedback. Thanks, Sandy. Gary?
Yeah, so I'll agree with a lot of what Sandy said. The presentation was a good presentation, but when you're given that short amount of time, you really got to focus in, especially when you're potentially pitching to a bunch of venture capitalists / investors. Is you got to get to the point of really what's the value here? How do you really differentiate yourselves from the competitors? And then, as I said earlier, focusing in on, what's our focus here? This is a big market. I kind of didn't get it, even though I saw the hockey, right? The sports part of it. Maybe I wasn't listening clear enough. And then ultimately, what's also the return on investment for that vertical? Like, how does this differentiate compared to what's being done, and how is that an advantage moving forward? But otherwise, a good presentation.
Thank you. Josh?
Sure. Yeah, not too much to add other than, given, I think, I'll put in air quotes, this is a cluttered space, but maybe that's more a reflection of saying it's a very broadly defined space. So I think for me, if you had been able to start with, here's what we are, here's what we're not, and this is why it's special, and maybe that's your IP in and of itself, or maybe it's a particular, trade secret that you have, whatever the case is, it would have been just really helpful to me to get you've seen a lot of these types of things before, here's why we're different, just kind of in my face, because I think there's a general understanding that there's a lot of opportunity in this space broadly defined, but I get nervous when I see companies that are kind of saying we can do everything for everybody. Not that that's what you said, but overall, I think it was a good presentation.
Thank you. Cesare.
Agreed. Good presentation. I in particular liked the life example, right? And the fact that it worked and it didn't crash, which in most cases, everything crashes when you actually show it. That was very, very nice because people got it. You got the people to get it within 20 seconds or whatever, 30 seconds, which is great. What I would recommend focusing on is, as well as Joshua said, and others probably said as well, unique sauce. Why is it different than others? I've been using some of those services in the past. I know that I can search for hockey or whatever. I couldn't get the transcripts there, right? So is the transcript the real differential, or what? Like, explain what is different than others don't have, because it's not like the first thing ever. And competitive metrics. So basically related to it, get this slide where you basically have those dots or not dots, or you're going to the up and right, just explaining why you have something that others don't, and how does it stack against the existing solutions.
Thank you. F.
Yeah, thank you. I thought it was a great presentation. I'm a lot dangerous. That was what I did in my career. I sold a company that basically did that. We were the alpha site for Avid. So we tested we were the first line of test for you guys. So I get it. The real issue is, one, this competitive differentiation. You really need to dig in there. Number two, you gave us kind of a product presentation versus an investor presentation. So you could have rolled a lot of that up into case studies, use cases, which you did well, but I think you could have really rolled that up. The next piece is, I think you really could have focused on the, unique pieces of core tech, which I'm sure there is quite a bit of. And then really the last piece I would just kind of frame up is one of two things. If you're going to really make a go of this, meaning you're going to take it out, beyond a near-term acquisition, which is probably the right answer, moving this into the Instagram and TikTok world, turning a enterprise, cloud product like this into a mobile app plug-in for these tools is where the market is. That's where the folks are. And I know it's a generational thing. You work on the enterprise, but that's how the reality of this stuff works today. So you either have to shift there, or you needed to give us a matrix graph at the end showing acquisitions and what the metrics are around that. Because my gut is Apple or someone else, Adobe, must be already, out schmoozing you guys. So, let us know what the economics are, because then it helps us understand, what an ROI could like on a funding event.
Thank you. Ready to vote again? 1, 2, 3.
All right, I have 4 4s and a 3, and that's we have a 5.
I upgraded to a 5.
Wow.
Sounds good. So puts us at 20.
All right, nice score. Very nice job. Nice score. Next up, let's welcome back Jack Dwan with Gliding Eagle. Jack.
Hi, let me just share my screen really fast here.
Please.
Great. So I decided to start using Notion. So that's actually a lot of investors really like to see everything stored, but I'm going to make it very simple. So Eagle One really one API to solve one question. As you can tell, I'm extremely focused. So what does it matter? Let me tell a story about just at onset of COVID last year. We've been doing this for a number of years to tracking wine around the world. But last year, we're the first company to tracking masks. We've been asked to say, look, can you track a mask? We said we can. But then realize a number of customers asked me, can you actually track things much wider? So that would get us to start thinking about it. What if we don't track anything everywhere? That's a much harder problem. Even the question is very simple, where's my water? Then you can tell. So I mentioned about half million, or in this case, 400,000 free forwarders around the world. That's when they're gonna get data. We have the two issues actually with integration, as you can tell, API, cloud software. One is really hard to integrate with each system. That typical companies spend about a few weeks to a few months to integrate one system, very high cost of integration. Second, every data is not standard. So our entire idea is to make all of that. So you can only integrate with our API, we do all dirty work underneath that. And also we provide a singular standard data set. So give you a quick example how it works just from a UI perspective, just knowing that everything else is an API driven or data, one question. So now this is actually live. We've been doing this for a few years for wine, and this allows you to track N95s from here to China, end to end. We spent only 3 days, the system was online to track. That was the powerful moment we realized we're gonna do this. So now, in the space of logistical technology, it's really booming, especially COVID. This is a matrix. Even though there's a lot of things are in supply chain logistics tech, but we have to be very focused. We only care about one thing, is end-to-end visibility platforms. For example, digital freight forwarder, you probably know Flexport, also Cal Alarm. So they like a nail, they do very deep, take many things in terms of logistics. Broker a freight or custom broker, we don't do any of that. All we do is to care about where is it, only 4 data points. So that's a big differentiation. A nail versus a glue. So we had to be as wide as possible to solve that problem. So this is what we're doing. So for the last few years, we raised $1.5 million. Our revenue now is 1.2 million because we're actually doing for wine. Before we're raising $5 million, very clear. It's building digital infrastructure. 2-year run rate. We want to build a core team in China because the entire supply chain is centered in China and Asia. So we want to be next generation product, fully cloud native. From the get-go, in 12 months, we should deliver the first generation product in production with 20, 30 free forward integrations. So next 2 to 5 years, $400 million validation goal to build up entire digital infrastructure to connect 400,000 free forwarders. Think of this as Plaid, connecting different banks together. So 3 potential revenue streams. Number 1 is cloud to usage, SaaS model, the dollar per API tiered. Second one is, it's cooler, it's big data intelligence. When we have so much data, we can have better logistics planning, optimization. Last one, actually, I'm most excited about is new use cases. Just imagine today, without manually check where my product is, you can do everything by API by code. Within 0.2 seconds, a lot of business cases happens. People can do that in dynamic financial working capital insurance or package insurance. So those kinds of things we think about, we can get a revenue share from that. So that's it. Love your feedback.
Right. Thank you very much, Jack. And we have questions, please. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, let someone else go. I'm good.
Josh, why don't you go, and then Cesare, and then F. Josh?
Yeah, is this hard to reverse engineer?
It's not. Because we've been doing actually, like my background in technology in Sun, so we actually built a system about 7 years ago. And the entire link and logic, it's actually the reason I put it very simple, it's actually hard to do. Another thing is I had a lot of guts to actually go out and link as much as possible. Those are things actually not easy to do.
So I'm sorry, the answer is it is hard to reverse engineer, not that it is.
No, so it is hard to reverse engineer. That means when we do well, it's hard for other people to copy. I think that's what you're asking. Yeah. Yes.
Okay. All right. Good. Cesare and then F.
What's the current status? So is there already paying customers? Is there already, like, can you tell what is the current revenue, current number of implementations? Where are you now?
Sure, great question. I want to be very clear. Today, we have $1.2 million revenue from one industry. We're 200 clients ours, but it's nothing to do with the next generation. So we built a current generation only for one business, right? We raised $1.5 million now, revenue 1.2 million. But for the next phase, entire new company built for Asia. So when they write the code based on our knowledge I've built the last 2 years to build the entire thing to track anything.
Thank you. F?
Yeah, you know, so I would have liked a little more of the format here. So maybe you could talk about how you penetrate some of the global players. I get it. You want to be the platform for all, but you know, this really starts with, can you go get Walmart, or can you get another, you know, Alibaba or someone like that, US Postal Service? Talk about where you are there. You know, I think this kind of disruptor little boat in the ocean thing is cute, but doesn't really work for us.
I mean, it's a great question. So there's actually two types: data producers and data consumers. Data producer is a freight forwarders, right? And also digital verticals like FedEx, UPS guys, or long tail, a lot of small freight forwarders. So that's why we get them very different. When you talk about data consumers, one actually paying us. So right now we initially focus on cross-border e-commerce companies. There are a lot of new players out there. So what happens to Shopify and Stripe when they built, they focus on initial new generation of companies. And that's what we want to do. We're focusing initial to cross-border e-commerce players. Today, the entire e-commerce player right now is $1.1 trillion, that's the market. And it's very fast growing, about 1.6 trillion by 2026.
Well, okay, so let me just make sure I'm clear. So you're going to go at the consumer side and try and get them to pay for it, or the small, you know, e-com sites and get them to pay for it? I'm trying to understand.
That's okay. So what I'm trying to say is, first of all, I understand this is a digital infrastructure play, right? So we're building from two angles. One is data producers, freight forwarders, and we can integrate with them, get data. Another one is who are paid for using them. Using our services are cross-border e-commerce players, or let's say cross-border e-commerce merchants.
Does that answer, Jeff?
Kinda. Yeah, I'm good enough. I'm good.
Okay.
Thanks.
Any other questions? If not, you can mute yourself, Jack. We're going to switch to feedback, and we're going to start with Gary this time. Josh, Cesare, F, and then Sandy will be last. Gary?
I have to say I'm a bit lost on this one. I you know, from my perspective, again, you know, being a healthcare provider and focusing in on that, when I listened to the presentation, I literally went to the website, and I got most of my information from the website, because it took me a while to figure out what exactly the business model was and what you were actually developing in terms of technology. So I'm going to kind of almost excuse myself here, because I think I have such a lack of knowledge on this that I probably couldn't even effectively evaluate it. So I'm going to excuse.
Okay, Josh?
I'm kind of in a similar camp. I mean, Jack, I think you did a really good job presenting, and while the slides might not have been the prettiest slides in the world, there was a lot of good stuff in there for me to take from it. So I like how straightforward you were, and you seem very disciplined in the way you're building the technology in the company. So generically, this seems really interesting. I just feel really stupid, so I don't know what to say.
Those are not good signs. You got two guys that are not getting it. Cesare, how about you?
Basically, Jack, you did a few things which were probably a little bit non-standard. Also, your sector is a little bit kind of it's a complicated sector, right? It's essentially API integrations within the logistics industry, right? Which is quite a theoretical thing, which none of us in everyday life deals with, right? So nobody has like really affinity with this. So make it easy for all of us, right? Use more references to other successful companies, which is like Flexport, right? Which is like a multi-billion-dollar company, and explain what exactly it does, how does it work. From what I understood, The technology of doing this, so those API integrations are not difficult to make. It's more about how you get the critical mass of all of it, right? Which means that you need to explain more time telling people how you're going to do it. If I saw on your website that it's a one line of code. If it's one line of code, I'm worried as an investor because I get my other guys to write one line of code and they're going to overtake your business. Make them feel that it's not as easy. So explain them, oh, you need to do so many integrations. This is how you're going to do it. You're going to have employed this type of amount of people. You're going to go after this sector and that sector. Explain how you're going to do the snowball effect. Because some of the things you employed there were non-standard, like you didn't use slides, you used your presentation, right? You didn't, you had this quote of one line of code, etc., which sounds cool, but it's actually maybe scary because there's a perception of no moat in your business.
Thanks. Very, very, very good feedback. F?
Yeah, so look, I really understand it. I think what you're trying to do is interesting. You need to have a focus, right? General SMB e-commerce is not a focus, right? You either need to go enterprise and pick partners, in which case, you're fighting against everybody from SAP to, a number of other Chinese companies that are trying to do this kind of thing coming out of Shenzhen and, the South there as well. Or you've got to look at it from the, is this, a Magento e-commerce plugin that we're going to charge X dollars and it becomes, the global space, or the Wix plugin. So, to me, this looked like, almost like a open source story that you came at us with. Now, I get the insert line of code. I understand there's a lot behind that. That's not an issue. What is an issue is using a standard format on a presentation. Number two, having a clear and concise market you're going after. And then number three, being able to drive the economics. How much does it cost to capture customers? How much you're going to make from capturing customers? And on top of that, to some of my earlier colleagues' point, where's some secret sauce? This is a big category right now, but people are using smart contracts, sort of blockchain, Ethereum, distributed ledger tech, all kinds of stuff to try and make this more secure and impenetrable. So I would like to see a lot more of that make it into the storyline. If it is there, great. Tell us more about it. But otherwise, it needs to come forward.
Thank you. Sandy, you want to wrap it up for us, please?
Sure. So, Jack, there were a couple things that I saw that I really wanted to hear more about, and I think would have answered some of what you're hearing from my fellow judges, which is you had a couple lines about big data intelligence, logistics optimized, and revenue share. So that sounds really interesting. I'm interested also on what sort of customer validation you have to date, or the market pull, if you will, for the big data intelligence and how you're using that. I will share with you, I happen to, have an experience last week where I got some stuff shipped to me from China, and they happen to use a, point by point tracking system. So I just experienced that, and I frankly thought it was a good experience. I don't yet understand why you're different than them. And these were for goods that were, a couple $100. So that didn't come through, just so you understand that. I think the other thing that I would say is I actually think, you have a really important vision, and I think you've been executing in a very disciplined way. However, you need to tell us, you need to show us, because I would have loved to see you just show one slide on, okay, here's what we've done to date with wine, right? And here's my vision for where we're going next. And here's what it means in terms of revenue, funding requirements, and again, what does investors care about, sort of pathways to exit, so that, so we don't understand that side of what I actually really believe is a really cool vision. And I sort of, it's a twinkle in your eye, and I think I see the seeds of it, but I don't understand it yet. And that's important, that you get us excited about that vision for the company that you're building and you've been working on, you know, for years now. And so I think bring that forward a little bit more. We'll help you. We'll help you get investors really excited. Great job overall.
Great feedback. Thank you so much, Sandy. Okay, let's vote again. 1, 2, 3.
All right, I have I have a 4 and 3 threes and a 2, and that puts us at 15.
Okay, thank you very much, Jack. Let's welcome back now Isaac Stoner with Octagon Therapeutics.
I'm back.
You're back. Welcome back.
Thank you very much. Let's see if I can make my screen share here. Parallel fundraising. This is great. Is that working? Can everyone see that?
You want to go full screen?
Yeah, here we go.
So you should be really warmed up.
Well, I've been doing this all day for days and days, so yeah. Well, thanks everybody. I'll hit go on my timer so I don't go over, but I'm Isaac Stoner, here to tell you about Octagon Therapeutics. We are something completely different from the last couple of presentations I saw. So we are developing a new class of medicines for chronic autoimmune disease. We call these precision immunomodulators, and I'll tell you what that means. Company's raised around $4 million to date. This is a seed extension round that we are currently raising, 1.5 million. That is on equivalent terms to our previous seed convertible note. Just as a snapshot, we are a preclinical stage biotech developing new targeted medicines. We have reached animal proof of concept with our lead drug targeting pathologically activated B cells. We've executed our first pharma partnership with Novo Nordisk, a very large pharmaceutical company. And we are based in the top biotech cluster in the world, Kendall Square on Main Street. We're across the street from Moderna. We're next door to Pfizer, next to MIT. This is a little bit about myself. I'm a serial entrepreneur. This is actually my 4th go around with a seed stage biotech. I've been lucky enough to have been through 2 previous exits. My co-founders are both out of Harvard. Fred Ausubel is a National Academy of Sciences member, 35 years as a tenured professor, has now wound down his academic career, and Peter is the inventor of our technology. So we are based on Main Street in Kendall. This is our beautiful lab. And the problem we have set out to solve is the management of autoimmune disease. Right now, chronic autoimmune diseases tend to be episodic. Patients go through periods of flare and remission, and clinicians will throw everything at them to try and get these symptoms under control when they're in a flare. That's corticosteroids, immunosuppressant drugs. The net result is they damage healthy immune functioning at the same time as trying to treat that underlying disease. We've developed a class of drugs that specifically leverages some new biological insights into what's going wrong with these immune cells that drive these diseases, such that when patients are in that flare state, when they have active disease, our medicines are activated and will specifically suppress that population of cells. When patients are in the remission phase of disease, our medicines are effectively just metabolized and excreted. They're effectively silent. This makes them an ideal class of medicines for autoimmune disease. So we have shown that the biology we're exploiting for our first program targeting B cells is present across a range of diseases, including some very large ones. However, we want to start in a small targeted disease area. The first place we are looking is a disease called pemphigus. Patients present with these open skin lesions due to their immune system attacking their skin. It's a horrible disease. It is an orphan disease, and currently immunosuppressive drugs are used to manage this, which leads to some bad outcomes. These patients get nasty infections. I'll just skip over that. We are in animals. Our first animal model is an animal skin model. You can see here's a healthy animal. This is the animal with the disease phenotype. This is high dose steroids, which are toxic if you use them for more than a few days. And Octagon's medicine here, which really looks much, much better than the untreated disease. So the business model we are developing, we are not going to take this all the way to commercialization. That's 8+ years, hundreds of millions of dollars. Instead, we're going to focus on what we're good at, which is drug discovery, broad IP filings, and drive value capture through partnership and M&A. So we've already done our first small partnership around applying our technology towards a different group of diseases. Our lab space is sponsored by Abgen, who's obviously a large pharmaceutical company. And if we look at recent preclinical deals, typically what we could expect for a deal, even at this stage, is a $500 million deal, but most of that backloaded. So it's a $50 or $60 million upfront and then 10 times that in milestones. That's how investors get their multiple back. If we continue to go it alone, if we do a larger equity financing and get into human clinical trials, we're then looking at listing. We're seeing companies going public on the NASDAQ with really thin clinical data. These just happened recently. So again, Octagon Therapeutics, we've raised around 4 million to date. We're raising a seed extension round. There's around 300K left in allocation. And we'd love to have a longer conversation with anyone who might be interested in learning more. Thank you.
Thank you. Right on time. All right. Thanks very much. Okay. Do we have some questions for Isaac? Yes. Josh, please.
Have you already taken, or are you seeking in this round, or do you expect to get some soon, some capital from a would-be buyer? Because usually this stage, you'd probably start to have those conversations with a strategic investment from somebody that down the road would be taking you guys out.
Yes, so Novo Nordisk is paying us for that early collaboration we're doing. It's a small deal, but we maintain ownership of all IP, and they're already talking about a bigger deal, right? They've asked us what a 12 or 18-month partnership looks like, and we're seeing dollar signs. So in our mind, that's a $3 to $5 million engagement. Non-dilutive, that's no strings attached. And then the corporate venture arms of some of these groups, Amgen specifically, they're knocking. We're trying to hold them at arm's length and continue to create value on a capital efficient strategy, but the opportunity to take a larger check from one of these strategics is certainly there.
Perfect, thanks. And then the other quick thing is, I mean, on its face, you guys have an excellent deck. Seems like a super crisp story and really good team and the right ability to execute. Are you guys really hard to work with? I mean, the story I've sometimes come against is you guys have been serial entrepreneurs, you're really successful, and now you have insane expectations of your investors in terms of how much the business is worth.
So, so we treat our investors like teammates. You know, this is a $10 million cap round, just like our seed, 10 million cap, 20% discount. I have my own cash in the round on those exact terms. I have family money, friends money in the round on exactly those terms. You know, we're trying to treat investors well, especially early stage investors. We do additionally have a rights letter alongside the convertible notes specifying that if we do a larger venture round, there's no shenanigans with the venture folks trying to cram down our early investors.
Great. Well, it sounds like a potential magical unicorn. So thank you.
Josh, it sounds like he'd be an easy guy to work with.
Yeah, it does.
Josh, maybe we should talk.
Sounds like a good idea.
Great. All right, Dr. Gary Goldman, please.
So great presentation, by the way, just every aspect of it. My question is, so in your current round, I know it sounds like it's more friends and family seed. Are there any strategic investors right now in your current round?
So we have institutionals in, and we have a couple of industry veterans, you know, folks who are running their own biotechs. But it's a mixed bag right now. So, you know, a little bit is friends and family, a lot is family office, you know, kind of industry insiders, and then a couple of small funds who specialize in biotech. The round is being led by a firm in your neck of the woods, BioRock Ventures. You can look them up, but all they do is therapeutics deals. The managing partner is really, really good. We like her a lot.
Great, thank you.
Cool. Other questions for Isaac? If not, we'll switch. Oh, yes, Cesare.
What do you think your exit horizon is?
Exit horizons, timelines?
Yeah.
We've already had a larger company express interest. If we could get to a deal that made sense within the next 18 months, we wouldn't turn it down. So we're trying to keep optionality here. The longer we can go without doing that large dilutive VC round, the more we have that preclinical exit on the table for us. So that's part of what the seed extension is all about as well, is making sure we have the runway to explore a near-term exit, in addition to having the optionality to continue to go it alone.
Gary, another question, which will be the last question.
Yeah. So with this current round, what does that get you through? I mean, is that getting you through clinical trial? I mean,
no. So
trials?
This gets us to effectively a development candidate. It gets us to our final drug that'll be what we take into humans. We're doing additional med chem optimization of that drug right now. And so it's even going to cost us a couple $1 million to get through the IND enabling work. That's the package we take to FDA where they give us a green light to go into humans. We're getting into the point where things get super regulated. When they get super regulated, they start to get super expensive. Yep. So even the next level of animal studies starts to get pretty expensive in terms of the toxicology.
Great.
We're gonna switch to feedback. Isaac, you can mute yourself now because it's non-rebuttal, and we're gonna start with Josh, Cesare, F, Sandy, and finish up with Gary. Josh.
Oh, I think it was probably the best presentation I've seen all day today. So would look forward to speaking with you, and you obviously know what you're doing, so you don't need compliments you've already heard before.
I like that. Cesare.
I like that you're realistic about and telling people that you're too small to go all the way through this, right? In terms of you will commercialize it, monetize it earlier than you know, in 20 years time when you get all the approvals, you'll become $1 billion company, a multi-billion-dollar company. So I like that approach as an investor. I like the fact that, you know, you're a full-time entrepreneur. That means that you've done a lot of learning that nobody from the investor community has to pay for. You took your lessons, and obviously the team is very respectable for coming from a great university and all that. So I think it's very impressive.
Ephraim.
Yeah, sorry about that. I really like the presentation, Isaac. I think it was well put together. It really framed up the stage of the company. I think that the only thing I would really add to that would be maybe a timeline, sort of the milestones that you anticipate going through over the next phases of your company. There is a lot of FDA hurdles. There's the trial hurdles. There's the cost. Also, when you're dealing with typically kind of earlier stage and not specific biotech therapeutic investors like us, I think it's really helpful to help us understand things like stage gates. What stages will you make decisions based on clinical trials, and what the price tags are attached to that? Because I think, it's helpful for a group of like us at this Series A, especially into a note round, to understand that, there'll probably be $80 to $100 million invested in this company over time. But, by the end of the story, if you've gotten through all those stage gates, it's probably a $7 billion company when you get there, right? So I think it's really important to have that timeline, both to date and going forward, what those milestones and stage gates are for success.
Thanks, F. Sandy?
Isaac, so nice presentation overall with a lot of information that I would expect from somebody coming out of the PureTech shop, which is great proving ground. So a couple things, I think my asks, most of them are things that questions that I have that you'd probably get into in like a first or second meeting with an investor. And so those have to do with really understanding a little bit more of the competitive landscape relative to other therapies, sort of, coming out there, and also probably probing a bit more on the clinical side and some of those other solutions. I did love, by the way, that you had a very defined initial focus, and your rationale for that was great. I'd probably also certainly want to understand more on your IP and sort of the strength of that, where that is from a diligence standpoint, any sort of issues on that front. But again, those are probably first or second meetings or discussions. Great job overall today.
Thanks, Sandy. Gary?
Yeah, so I would concur with Sandy. I mean, again, I'll repeat that I think this was an excellent presentation. Being someone who invests in this space all the time and runs a clinician-driven network that strategically invests in these kind of companies, I very much appreciated your clearly delineating your exit strategy, because those are the kind of that's the decision process that we use for investing in these companies. Because as I'm sure everyone here knows, is that sometimes these pharmaceutical investments can go on and on and on and on. And as Zeph was saying, there can be, $80 million invested in it. But, a lot of times when you look at these companies with the idea that that the management team is acknowledging that they want to look at an early exit as from the perspective of an acquisition, that's very important, because you realize as an investor that you are, you know what you're investing in. You're not going to get diluted out over, a C and a D round before this ever gets commercialized. So I think you did a very good job with that. What I'd like to see, but you're early on, so it's going to be difficult to assess, is, this is a very high need market, a very complicated market from, from an autoimmune perspective. And, as a healthcare investor, I certainly would like to be able to go in and do some more clinical due diligence on where you are compared to what our other competitors in this area are.
Okay, you guys ready to vote? 1, 2, 3. 5. We got it.
5, 2, 4, 3 4s, 5 and 4 4s. And that puts us at 21.
21. You got the lead so far, Isaac. Nice going. All right, let's welcome back David Benno with Xeno Bioscience. Dave.
Okay. So hello, I'm David Benno, CEO of Xeno Biosciences. Like a lot of the rest of our team, I've got 35 years of experience in science and business, and I'm here to tell you about gastric bypass in a pill. And what we have done with this is to follow a disruptive insight about gastric bypass surgery. And gastric bypass surgery is by far the most effective treatment for obesity, but most people have always thought that it's effective because you don't eat as much or you feel full faster. What we understand now is that gastric bypass surgery is unique because the air that we swallow every day is allowed to transit down into the intestine and create an aerobic environment for bacteria to grow in the intestine. And for those of us that don't have gastric bypass surgery, that does not happen because the air is trapped by the stomach. Now, we've been able to develop gastric bypass in a pill and show that it works in animal models as well as in humans. And the reason that we can do this in humans, or the reason that we did it, was we started off the company as a supplement company. And when you do that, you're allowed to give it to humans. You can't do that with an IND, which we have now filed. But in our case, in the lower box here, what we had are individuals that took it from 4 to 6 weeks with 5 to 11.5% weight loss. Now, the drugs that are currently on the market at best get about 6% weight loss over a year, and we get that with 4 to 6 weeks. So the data that we have from our humans helps us to plan our clinical trial as well as to de-risk our clinical trial that we're raising money for. And what I mean by that is we will be using healthy but otherwise obese individuals for this trial, and we will be increasing the doses that they get in this trial. But we've already given humans these first 3 doses, and we know they work. So we expect very positive outcomes from the trial. The team that we have is excellent, years and decades of experience. And our advisory board is world-class, past presidents of Obesity Society, things like that. The IP situation that we have is excellent. We have issued claims in the US and we have claims allowed in the EU, and we're expecting those shortly. In terms of the market, it's astronomical, but in terms of competition, the market itself tells us that there is a significant gap. This is the number of people in the US, 46% they're obese. And these are the number that are treated. And the reason that they're treated is the drugs are not that good. They don't induce weight loss as much as they should, and they have severe side effects. But we don't look at our competitors as our competitors. We also look at them as our potential customers, because we've been talking to all of these companies over the last year or year to two. And the reason that we're doing it is that they are the ones that are forking out the billion-dollar exits for small companies in the space. And so we're looking for them to be a potential acquirer or a partner as we go forward. We are previously have raised $2.6 million to do all of our preclinical work and have met all of those guidelines. We're looking for $6 million to run the clinical trial. This would be Series A. We expect this to have a 50x return for our potential investors. And we only need $1 to $2 million more to close this round. In terms of timelines, we're raising this money for the phase 1. This will create a significant inflection point. As I told you, we would either exit through a trade or partnership, a sale. But we also have the option for an IPO, as most biotech companies are doing at this point. This would be a substantial IPO because people understand obesity and weight loss. If we don't do that, we would raise more money and then do the phase 2 trials and exit. So the first exit would likely be about 2 years from now, and the final potential exit for us would most likely be 4 years.
Dave, your 4 minutes are up. We're gonna switch to feedback now.
Yep, that's it.
And I've got the first question. Did you say 46% of the people in the United States are obese?
By definition, they are obese, and that's a BMI of over 30 or 27 with a comorbidity. That's not overweight. That's actually 85% of the US.
Wow. Wow. Okay, if we could get that slide deck down, please, and questions? Any questions? Yes, Cesare.
So you mentioned that it is the efficacy is roughly the 5% weight loss. I think 4.8 was for the line that you highlighted after a few weeks versus 6% of the competition. So if it's 4.8 versus 6, it's not a massive difference. I understand there's a timing difference, right? You get there much faster. So can you comment a little bit more on how much better it is versus the existing available pills on the market?
Yes, it's much better. And the time is the key point there. It takes about a year for those drugs, for all drugs to take their maximum effect. And we're getting that much sooner, which means that our ramp down will be much deeper. We'll get more weight loss with time.
And then can you speak to the building on Cesare's question, the side effects that you know so far? Relative some of the things that are out there have, I mean, you can speak to what those side effects are and what you guys are seeing so far.
Yeah, so first of all, for the competition, there are, most of those are weekly, the best ones are weekly injectables, and they have up to 44% nausea, vomiting issues. In our very small trial, we saw well-tolerated. We had some mild transient constipation was our only minor side effect, and that lasted a day.
Yes, Gary.
So when you say small trial, can you define what that N number was?
Yeah, it was, couldn't get to that. Only 4 individuals took this a total of 9 times. And we had, in each of them, we had the changes that we would anticipate, microbiome, changes in weight, et cetera.
Gotcha. So, and with respect to that, so how are you viewing this as a solution? So you're talking to someone now who our clinical network is actually right now creating a obesity and bariatric community around bariatric surgery and bariatric solutions for obesity management, which is precision based. So do you see this, if you're successful, do you see this being replacing as the first line of therapy for obesity management prior to an invasive procedure like a Roux-en-Y?
Yes, I do. We and our advisors say the same thing, and they are, presidents of the Obesity Society, that this would be a first-line therapy. And remember that bariatric surgery is actually very downstream after they've seen their GP, their endocrinologist, and they fail a year of exercise. Then they get bariatric surgery. So this would be the first line going forward.
And just to clarify, because I want to make sure I heard it correctly, did you say that this was going to be an over-the-counter, or is this prescribed?
This will be prescribed.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
So a question from somebody who doesn't have much experience in the space of clinical trials is, I've heard of small clinical trials, but why only 4?
Well, at the time, we thought this was going to be a supplement. And so you saw the person at the bottom of the screen lost 11.5% of their weight. When I saw that data set, I knew the FDA would never let us sell this at Walgreens. So we switched to a drug.
Got it. Okay. Other questions?
Stop doing anything else. Yeah.
Got it. Any other questions? If not, we'll switch to feedback, and we'll start with Cesare, then F, Sandy, Gary, and finish up with Josh. Cesare, you're up first.
I love the idea. It's such a brutal problem. It's such a terrible problem in America and many other countries. It's just a result of the civilizational advancement and eating processed foods and all that. The healthcare cost. It's tremendous for the country. You're addressing a massive, immediate problem that has to be solved. And yeah, there are some solutions which cost money and take pain. If you can deliver something similar in a pill, that's brilliant. So I'm very impressed by the solution. Obviously, there is it still can probably die a few times in an FDA process, right? As always, any of these ideas. But I guess that's part of the risk, right? It's a big risk, big returns. I would put my vote on it.
Thank you. F?
Yeah, certainly. So, David, it is very interesting. I mean, the microbiome has been a topic of investment at large degree for the many, many years. I'm surprised that you haven't gone and partnered with Danone or someone. I mean, they actually have the, synthetic microbiome in their facility where they can test much of this stuff without going through trials. And then the other issue is, really, should you just stay outside of the FDA process? I think you're overly optimistic in terms of your timeline. That was the timeline I was hoping for from our prior presenter. I liked your timeline. It was very openly optimistic. I would probably add a couple lines to that. So in general, I think it's super interesting. I think you should be cautious about saying things like trials when it's 4 people. Trials to most of us mean much larger, cohorts. I think you might want to dial down, sort of the medical chat until there is some medical chat. But I think it's super novel, and you could go into the nutraceutical space, and if it has results, this could be very, very meaningful. And then let the FDA process play out in the meantime. That would be my personal feedback.
Thanks, F. Sandy?
So, David, one thing that I thought would have helped us understand sort of where this fits a little bit more is there's a lot of things out there, both over the counter and prescribed. And so I think just showing that landscape a bit and showing, where you will be placed, in that landscape, where you're aiming for, with some critical sort of market information, that would have just made this very strong. I think you did a really nice job overall. So good job.
Great. Thank you. Gary?
Yeah, I think you did a very good job. This is a potentially huge market, as Max pointed out when he heard that number, which is somewhat sobering at best. And knowing this market as an anesthesiologist and being involved in a lot of these surgical procedures and knowing the complications of these procedures, if this were to pan out, to be able to be a first-line defense in obesity management. This has huge potential, and it's, essentially a fairly benign therapy based on, I'm on your website reading a little bit about the science. It's not a very complicated approach. It's interesting that no one has ever, or someone hasn't really approached this beforehand. So I think you did a great job communicating it. You did a very good job presenting it. I think you were appropriate in your projections. I would caution you, as was brought up, I jumped all over it, as you saw. When you say a small study that gets the ears of anyone who's done any clinical research, gets our ears up as to what does that mean? It's like the long-standing joke is, a study of 1, right? That's called anecdotal last I checked. So 4 is just a little above that. So I'd be careful, especially when you're talking to clinical investors, that maybe leave that out or acknowledge what that really represents. But otherwise, great job.
Thanks, Gary. Josh, please.
Sure. Yeah, not much to add. That was a great job too, both the materials as well as the way you communicated. And you seem pretty humble, which is, I think, important as well. Certainly helps the credibility. So yeah, it seems like a little bit the golden ticket if it works the way intended. And obviously would just want to understand a little more of the technicalities of it and make sure somebody could sort of sign off on it there. But otherwise, the only other thing that kind of caught my attention, which I forgot to ask you, I apologize, was the bold claim of, I think, a 50 times return, which I translated in my mind to you're saying we're going to get a 50x our money. I wasn't totally clear on what the reference points were there in terms of what 50x on what. I don't think I actually saw the valuation, but I may have missed that. I apologize. But in any event, if that then included, the expected dilution from further rounds, because you talked about the different off ramps, et cetera. So the only sort of comment, I don't know if it's even a criticism, but just comment would be, if you're going to make a statement like that, which can be very alluring sounding, just unpack that a little bit before we, have some credibility challenges there.
Great feedback. Okay, folks, let's vote for the last time. 1, 2, 3. 5. We got 2 5s.
3 5s and 2 4s. All right. And that will put us at 23.
Wow. Wow, some great scores. Congratulations, David. You won 23, beat out Isaac by 21. And then we had a 20, Sam with a 19 for Dave with Airbridge. Wow, some great presentations, great ideas, really fun stuff, and good guys presenting as well. I really want to thank our panel. You heard me say that, I'm surrounded by a lot of smart people. I think, listening to my fireside chat with Kevin, who's obviously very smart, and the 6 people that were here, I know Garrett had to leave early, some really smart, accomplished investors. I want to thank them all for their input. And this is the last time that Adrienne Chin will be involved with running a Pitchforce. She's been here for 4 months, 5 months. How long, Adrienne?
About 5.
5 months. And she just graduated Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. She's off to Japan in a couple months to live there. And hopefully at some point after she teaches English, she'll get involved in the startup world, and we'll see how we can help her there. She's done a fantastic job for us. And now we've got Will, who's here, Will McColgan, who's a junior at Cal, who will be helping us for the next several months. And we could not do these programs without them. Thanks again to the panelists. Thanks again to my team and everybody who joined us. Over 60 people were here. I hope you all enjoyed it. Next week, we've got another Pitchforce next Tuesday. On the 18th, we've got 6 panelists, and we're going to have 10 companies pitching, seeking their seed round. And then on May 27th, cannabis. And F will be here for that. F is a mainstay in our cannabis panel because Advanced Ventures is in the ag tech space, in the cannabis space. So looking forward to seeing him again. And thank you all, and I hope you have a good evening. Thanks very much.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Adrienne. Good luck. Sean. Be well. Thanks for everything.
Thank you.
Welcome, Will. Thank you.
Good luck, Adrienne.
Welcome, Will.
Hello.